Well, this is Betting Weekly Extra Time, Champions League edition. On today's show, the best bets from Europe's top competition. It's match week 3, as the boys predict. Goals at Gala, a fractious affair in France. Prop bets profit in Berlin, and hopefully a lack of action in Leipzig. You're with Dan Roebuck, while RJ, Will White, and Steve Wyss are all back, aiming for a third straight winning session on the group stages. 6 games covered, 9 official picks, 4 leans, and the best advice from some of the shrewdest operators around. We're going to kick off in Steve's back garden, and also Galatasaray versus Bayern, where Bayern are the short price favourite, Steve, at minus 240. This is Tuesday, 12:45 Eastern. Gala a plus 600, the draw plus 425. Look, Bayern have got a great record in group stages over the years, Steve. There's no doubt about that. And they usually score goals. And if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it. Steve, what's the play here?
The bet, Dan, is over 3.25 goals. I think it's about minus 110 now, but I can't get away from the goals in this game. Good day to everyone, by the way. You're right, I'm in my back garden because my internet's gone down. So Dan's doing the hosting duties today, so thanks to Dan for that. But yeah, every single Bayern Munich game this season has contained at least 3 goals. So if that happens again, the very worst that can happen is a half loss. And I've said before, you don't want to lose anything, but half loss is better than a full loss. Bayern have only kept 4 clean sheets in all competitions this season, including one of those I think was in the DFB Pokal against someone terrible. And I just wonder, Galatasaray might be without Mauro Icardi for this match due to an injury. We don't know yet. So that would be a blow, I must say. But I still think they've got some pacey attacking players, on the wings especially, who can cut inside and maybe get a goal on Bayern. But even if they don't, then I think Bayern are well capable of scoring 3 or 4 themselves. Explosive firepower. Looking ahead, they've got Darmstadt at the weekend. So I think they'll be quite focused on this game. And I think they could run up a few. I think they could rack up the score against Galatasaray, who it's a tough place to go. But I don't think Galatasaray can defend very well. So I really like the overs here. Over 3.25 goals, Dan.
One of the problems, Will, I think, with Bayern in European competition is that the bookmakers, the market makers, have caught up. For a long time, you backed over 2.5, you backed over 3.5, you're in significant profit, but those profits are getting fewer and fewer year on year. Is it still value to play Bayern in these group games when it comes to overs?
I think so, yeah. I mean, normally I wouldn't be backing a line this high on the overs, especially not an over 3.5. I know there are lots of us feel uncomfortable doing that, but there are 2 teams I think I'd break that rule for, and one of them, Brighton, we might get onto later in the Europa League show, but Bayern would be the other. I just think with the attacking weapons they have at their disposal, it's very, very tough to look in the unders goals here. So yeah, I quite like this bet.
So that's overs, and the Asian line 3.25 for Steve at around about minus 110 the moment. Union Berlin, Napoli, the next game we're going to take a look at again Tuesday, but this is a later kickoff at 3 p.m. Eastern. RJ is going to take a look at this one with a couple of prop bets. We've got a lean from Will as well. Union at around about plus 295 at the moment. Napoli are the favourites, minus 107, potentially without Victor Osimhen. In fact, I think he's going to miss this game. But RJ, we're looking at a team total for Napoli here, and it's something that you did with Stuttgart to good effect, to profitable effect at the weekend in their match against Union, who are in a run of shocking form at the moment. Talk us through your team total bet first up.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So looking at Napoli, team total over 1.5 at minus 106. As discussed, Union Berlin, the Bundesliga side, who have had a challenging start to this season, right? Plain and simple. Despite finishing 4th in Bundesliga last season, which got them to this stage that we speak about in the Champions League today, they've been on a losing streak of 8 consecutive losses across all competitions, including the 3-0 loss over the weekend against Stuttgart. Clearly, the international break did not benefit them in any positive fashion. Their journey through the Champions League so far has been quite heart-wrenching, if you will, with the last-minute goal by Real Madrid, and they squandered the 2-goal lead against Braga, resulting in both losses so far up until this point. So they currently sit at the bottom of Group C with 0 points. Napoli, on the other hand, the Serie A champs, are second in Group C. They've had a few spectacular performances. They needed a late own goal to secure a win against Braga. they suffered a loss against Real Madrid. So they won one, they lost one. However, their recent 3-1 victory over the weekend in Serie A against Hellas Verona should be somewhat of a morale booster for them. And looking at team news, Union Berlin will miss several key players: Andres Schaefer, Lorenz Dell, Joseph Juranovic, Jerome Roussillon. And then they have a few returning members: Robin Knock, Ronnie Kadra, Alex Kral, who had fitness issues. They returned and they played a little bit against Stuttgart over this past weekend, so they should be available. As we discussed, or we talked about briefly before the show, Victor Osimhen is not going to be available for Napoli. It's not it's a big deal, but it's still not going to sway me away from this. There's obviously many talented players, the Georgian Wonder Boy. There's talent all over the field, and I think they'll get this done. But this match is crucial for both teams, plain and simple, especially Union Berlin, who desperately need a win. Napoli, on the other hand, looking to gain a little bit more breathing room up the table, sitting behind Real Madrid right now. But plain and simple, Union Berlin has continued, and they have not shown any promise. They just continue to show weaknesses. And because of their desperate form in this competition and domestically, I expected a much stronger Napoli side to exploit them. So team total over 1.5 is at -106.
Yeah, hit at the weekend as well with Stuttgart. Really good play from RJ then. Let's hope it's the same this time around. And you've got a corners play as well here, RJ. Just talk us through that.
Yeah, dive in briefly here, Dan. So looking at Union Berlin versus Napoli, over 9.5 corners at -103. Corners have been very profitable so far through this tournament. And I don't typically like to roll multiple bets in the same match, but as the old saying goes, is the shoe fits, wear it, right? So that's what I'm doing here. Average corners between both sides in their respective home and away spots over the last 25 matches is 10.65 corners per match. Union average around 10 at home. Napoli average around 11.31, which is the second highest corner tally in this round, this match day of this week. So I'm just rolling with the metrics-based play here.
So the stats suggest that we go over 9.5 at around about -103. Will, you have got a lean on this one with a Napoli success. You would have made it a pick if Osimhen would have started, I believe. Just give us your thoughts on the game.
Yeah, I think RJ's done a good job of outlining the case for Napoli here. You're right. It would have been an official bet for me if Osimhen had been fit. He's definitely out for this. One of the factors that I think originally moved this into potential bet range for me is the fact that Union Berlin are playing their home games in the Champions League and essentially neutral territory at the Olympic Stadion, which reduces their home advantage. So all things considered, my model does make Napoli -120 to win this game. So we do have 15 to 17 cents of value. There's a little bit too much uncertainty with how much is the Osimhen missing out worth to Napoli to make it an official bet for me. You know, Napoli were very unlucky against Real Madrid in the last round. They won the XG battle quite convincingly, actually went down 3-2. Union Berlin, RJ's already said they're basically in free fall in Bundesliga. They've lost 8 games in a row across all competitions. So, yeah, I fancy Napoli to get the job done here, but it's not an official pick.
Sure. Just a lean. If people like the money line, Napoli is the play as long as it doesn't go below -120. Steve, you are an Union hater even more after the weekend. Any comment on this game at all?
Well, I consider myself a pioneer of being against Union this season, and I'm very happy for the guys now to take over my mantle because what you said about them being underrated on the last European show. Forget that. They were terrible. They were garbage. Take them on, lay them all day because they look an absolute mess right now. So I love these picks.
Let's move on to some Wednesday games. We've got plenty of Wednesday picks for you. Barcelona, Shakhtar, we're going to look at first. 12:45 Eastern kickoff here. Shakhtar, obviously, massive price. Barcelona, very, very short, not really backable. They've won their first 2 games to 0. They've never begun a group stage campaign with 3 straight clean sheets. Steve, now you're playing overs here again. Talk us through the line, talk us through the play. But I mean, the question is this all on Barcelona to get the goals here?
This is a bit of a risky one. I'm taking over 3.25 goals at -129, I think is the price. I was torn between this and the minus 2.25 Asian handicap on Barcelona. They should win this quite easily in a similar way to how they beat Antwerp in game week 1. And I have a bad record in Shakhtar games. I don't think I've hardly ever had a winning pick on them on these shows that I've done going back from last season. I really struggle with them. I don't know whether it's because of this, the neutral territory, the war thing where they're playing for their country. They're playing with different emotions. But one thing I do know is that they'll give it a good go. They'll fight hard. On the field, their defence has been terrible. I've not been impressed with how they've defended against Porto or Antwerp. And if they're struggling against those two sides, Barcelona could run up a big number on them. So it just depends on Barcelona how focused they are. They do have the Clásico against Real Madrid at the weekend upcoming, so that maybe concerns me a bit. But maybe they might rest some defenders, and that might give Shakhtar more of a chance to score. You've got to ask yourself, which scoreline do I want in my pocket? Do you want the 3-0, in which case you take the handicap, or do you want the 3-1, in which case you take the goal? So I would much rather have that 3-1 on my side for this particular game. I admit it is a risky one, but I think there's a good chance of a Barcelona blowout. They just want to get themselves maximum points in this group and get qualified as soon as they can. Dan.
Yeah, I should point out as well that Barcelona aren't playing their games, are they, in the Camp Nou, because it's currently being revamped, of course. But I mean, look, they've been good so far, and potentially this could be the play. Let's move on to Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, Paris Saint-Germain against Milan. And we've got a couple of picks here, one from Will, one from Steve. We've got a lean from Will as well. Will, we'll start with you. Milan failed to score in the last 4 Champions League games. Paris Saint-Germain, you feel they need to bounce back after that defeat at St James's Park to Newcastle. And you're playing the money line here.
Yeah, I fancy PSG to get the job done here and win the game minus 118. I have been negative about PSG so far on these shows. I felt like I was the only person in the whole world on Newcastle at home to beat them in the last round. Got the job done there. Well, PSG didn't. I guess I did in a sense. But I do think this might be the spot to get on PSG on side. I've spoken about previously how I do rate Luis Enrique, and I think he's the type of manager that PSG needed to bring in, but that it would take a while for him to implement his systems and his methods. It might be still a little too early for that, but at least we've got a few more games under our belt, and PSG are starting to produce results. They generated 3.5 of expected goals away to Rennes a couple of rounds ago in Ligue 1. They look to start to be ticking, and they really do need to win this game. In my opinion, PSG have quite a big home field advantage in the Champions League, in contrast to Union Berlin, who we spoke about earlier. Dortmund, to me, not convincing away from home, and PSG beat them easily in that first game, but they have won overall 27 of 34 Champions League group stage games, and their form seems to be picking up, as I mentioned before. As you said, I think you said, Dan, Milan only haven't scored in the last 4 Champions League games. Was that the stat?
Yeah, going back to last season as well, when they had the draws with Inter in the semi-final.
Yeah. I mean, across all competitions, they've only scored 1 in the last 3 games, so they're not particularly fluent in an attacking sense. In my opinion, they seem to be a bit too reliant on Rafael Leao, and then also, I think we have to recognize that they played 50 minutes on Sunday, 10 men against a Juventus game, in quite an intense game. I'm not sure that's ideal preparation to go away to PSG, who are intimidating, formidable at home, and who do need the win. So I think, given the weapons PSG have at their disposal, I think Mbappe et al. Are going to get the job done here at minus 118.
Around about minus 127, it's shortened up to the last I looked. Just very quickly, is that still acceptable? What sort of price would you say to bettors? Look, that's fine, but don't go below. Or are we on the cusp already?
Minus 127 is about just enough value for the play, but I definitely wouldn't be going much shorter than minus 130. It might be worth waiting to see if there's a drift on Matchday here, because potentially some of the big Asian money in the syndicates might get involved in AC, because model rating wise, we're about at fair value at the moment.
Interesting. Steve, you've got a cards play in this one. Talk us through this. You think it could be a little fractious?
Well, first of all, I actually want to congratulate Will on the bet that he had at St James's Park. Again, I think that was a really good call from Will. Fair play. Maybe he's right about PSG all along in these rankings in Europe. But I was initially struggling to get some plays for this round, so I looked into the side market research, and I'm going with over 2.5 AC Milan cards at plus 125. They're a very dirty team, Dan. They are right up there in the Serie A fair play table, as in the worst end of it. The most cards in Serie A this season. They produced the most fouls on average per game in the Champions League this year, and also last season as well. So they're a very, really dirty side, and I think they're going to come under a lot of pressure here in Paris. PSG have got a lot of players who are very foulable, aren't they? You know, Mbappe's of this world, Dembele's of this world, and I think the group's on the line for AC Milan. I think they'll be getting stuck in. They've got loads of players who will happily take a card for the team. I'm going to give several names here. Rade Krunic is my favourite. I think he's one of the most dirty players in the whole of Europe, Croatia. Theo Hernandez as well. I've no idea how he's plus 320 to be carded at Bet Rivers. They are dangling a massive carrot there. But there's several other contenders like Tomori. And overall, I think we've got a Slovenian referee. I forgot what his name is. My notes are on my computer at home, so I'm a little bit off the cuff here. But I do know that he issued about 10 cards in a Europa League semi-final last year. And I remember him well. It was Roma against Leverkusen. He dishes cards like confetti. So this is a match ripe for, if AC Milan players do get stuck in, he's not going to let them get away with it. They've got to give it everything. I think we get at least 3 AC Milan cards, whether they're red or yellow, I don't care. And, get on that at plus money, Dan. It just looks a really good value play to me.
Slavko Vincic is the Slovenian referee who's going to be the man in the middle. And just a lean from Will. And when I got the picks from everybody last night, I mean, this for me is bet of the week. I mean, I looked at some of the stats. Will, I presume you've got them as well here. Just talk us through your lean and tell us why it's not an official pick.
I wish I had made it an official pick, to be honest. I think the reason why is for some reason I had this idea that over shots on target pick could not be an official pick, even though we sort of guide people mainly to the sort of main markets, but you're allowed prop bets. But anyway, tell us what it is. It's Ashraf Hakimi to have at least one shot on target at a huge price of plus 220. I would have this closer to plus 140, plus 150, although the stats would have it even shorter than that.
Absolutely.
He's averaged 0.76 shots on target per 90 in League 1 this season, albeit against largely weaker opposition than he's going to be facing this midweek. And he's had a shot on target in 7 out of 10 games in all competitions this season. He was rested over the weekend, so he's likely to come in fresh. And I think one thing that adds a lot of weight to this pick is he's going to be up against Theo Hernandez, who is not renowned as a particularly defensive left back. And so I can really see there being a lot of space in behind AC Milan. Ashraf bombing down the right-hand side and getting on the end of some crosses from the other side, perhaps, or just getting into the box and having at least one shot on target. So I think it's a huge price at plus 220. It's
absolutely massive. All the stats say it's a massive price, and it's the eye test as well, isn't it? Because whenever you see him play, he always gets forward, as you say, gallops forward. And as a former Inter player as well, let's face it, against Milan, there's a lot of narrative that ticks all the boxes, I think, as you say, up against Theo Hernandez, who'll probably get carded as well, trying to stop him, which might suit Steve's play as well. So that's a lean, but for me, it's bet of the week. Newcastle Dortmund next. Newcastle, I'm not sure if there has been money for Newcastle. Minus 139. I've got the updated price here from minus 136, and I think you put them up at a little bit bigger. So there has been money for them. I mean, Will, first of all, I know you like Newcastle to win this one. Do you think there's going to be more money for Newcastle as there has been in the Champions League this season running up to kickoff?
It's tough to say, really, because they have shortened quite a lot. Originally, when I was picking this out, they were minus 129. They've shortened by 10 cents. That's quite a big move already. It's tough to say. I mean, to the eye, It doesn't look like a big price. So hopefully there will be some money on the other side. But, having said that, I can see it shortening again. Newcastle have shortened in both games so far in Champions League group stage. And there's been money against Dortmund, especially in the AC Milan game. I think against away to PSG, there wasn't too much money around against Dortmund. But yeah, hard to say in terms of market direction. But in terms of a bet, I like Newcastle to win the game. Current price, I guess, -139. We saw what Newcastle did to PSG in the last round. Dortmund are definitely not as strong as PSG. I think the atmosphere at St. James's Park just puts a lot of pressure on teams when they go away. Dortmund, I'm not sure that's going to work in their favour. If Liverpool hadn't have scored 2 late goals down to 10 men, Newcastle would have been flawless at home this season. As I said, they've just beaten PSG 4-1 at home very convincingly. They've also just beaten Palace 4-0 at home. So how can you really oppose Newcastle here? There's not really much of a case for Dortmund, who have been largely unconvincing in the Champions League this season. Their league form looks strong, but against quite weak opposition, especially relative to the opposition they're going to be facing here. Newcastle will be missing Botman still, but we've spoken about Lascelles. He's stepped in well in the games he's played since Botman's injury. Joelinton's back as well. So if Tonali's head perhaps is in another place, he can step in as he did over the weekend and arguably provide just as much of a threat, albeit in a different style of play. As I said before, money has come from Newcastle in both of their matches so far in the Champions League season, and Dortmund drifted a lot against AC in the last round. I'm not sure Dortmund will be able to live with the intensity here at St. James's Park. And to add to all of the points I've already raised, Newcastle rested Isak and Almiron over the weekend and took Bruno and Trippier off early. So I think they're going to be coming in fresh. So I really fancy Newcastle to win here quite convincingly.
Yeah, Newcastle to win might go shorter. We'll see. Might not, as Will rightly points out, not one of those prices that might get smashed in at current odds. RJ, you've got a pick here as well. And again, we're focusing on corners. And I looked into some of the numbers. I mean, the averages here point to your play here. Talk us through your bet.
Yeah, so I'm looking Newcastle versus Dortmund over 9.5 corners at -107. As Will and you all have alluded to, Newcastle's shown formidable form in the Champions League so far, sitting at the top of the group table after 2 matches. 4-1 victory. Again, shout out, Will. That was a good call against PSG. And then they had a hard-earned point. I think it was a 0-0 draw against AC Milan. So, and then you look at Newcastle's recent Premier League form. It's been very promising. Obviously, they had a 4-0 win against Crystal Palace most recently. And as you said, Will, I kind of had a note about that St. James Park has turned into a fortress for them, right? With 5 consecutive wins at home, conceding just 1 goal during that stretch. Very tough place to play. Shout out to Steve on that, right? Challenging place at times. But Dortmund on the flip side, Dortmund has yet to find the back of the net in the group stage following a 2-0 loss to PSG and a goalless draw against AC Milan as well. However, their Bundesliga form has been somewhat impressive with 5 consecutive wins. The challenge for Dortmund will see if that they can translate that domestic form into European success, right? TBD on that. Dortmund securing their first win in the Champions League is obviously crucial for them to keep their hopes alive. So again, they're a bit desperate. They're a bit needing of points here. And then looking at the corner numbers, Newcastle averaged 10.13 corners at home in the last 25 matches. Dortmund averaged 11.53 corners on the road over the last 25, with an average of 10.83 corners per match, which was the highest of this match day amongst any Champions League matches. So over 9.5 corners, -107 was the strongest corner bet of the week.
That is RJ's pick in Newcastle, Dortmund, Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. We have got one more official play from Will. We've got a few more leans to bring you as well before we wrap up. This is Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's Leipzig against Zvezda, where Leipzig are the short price favourites. The goal line is under and over 3.5 goals. Bundesliga, as we've talked about over the last few weeks on various different shows, is the league for overs. 3.54 average this season. 37 from 72. The strike rate 51.4. Will, I'm looking at you. 16.17 points level stakes profit here. 22.5% return on investment. But this is the Champions League, not the Bundesliga. And this is a classic Will White bet to make you feel uncomfortable. Because despite all those numbers, Will, you're going unders.
Yeah, eventually I'm going to get one of these wrong, and I'm really gonna feel uncomfortable about a bet that feels uncomfortable. You're right, like the Bundesliga stats are undeniable, but if you look a bit deeper, Leipzig are actually the second lowest team in terms of combined XG generated across the Bundesliga. There is this perception that Leipzig are a super attacking team. They've got a lot of weapons, Dani Olmo, Xavi Simons, Loïs Openda, to name a few. But if you look into their data, they're actually not that high in terms of goal expectancy in their games. This is an extremely high line. The 3.5 line, I know Nigel he'd automatically be backing under 3.5 here in any game, really. But I don't think these two teams deserve this 3.5 line. I'd have it much closer to 3. So, in this circumstance, if you're betting the over, you really need to see some strong evidence of high goal expectancy. I just don't think it's here. Leipzig in their other home games so far in Champions League, albeit against a completely contrasting team, Man City only generated 0.47 of XG at home in that game. Sven Zvezda did put up quite a fight away to City, especially in the first half. I think they went in 1-0 up at half-time away to City in match week 1. Or was it match week 2? I think it was match week 1.
Match week 1, yeah.
So the other factor here is Leipzig unders have been backed not only heavily in their Champions League games so far, but I seem to believe they also have quite a lot of money come for unders in their domestic games as well. I think it's just this contrast between the data and the perception. And given that under 3 goal line was backed for Leipzig at home to City and away to Young Boys in previous rounds, I don't really see the rationale for the line being half a goal higher here. So I'll be backing the under 3.5 goals at -115.
Absolutely love it. Sometimes the metrics and the numbers and the closing line value and where the money can come from can give you contrasting ideas. Be interesting to see what happens. We're hoping for under 3.5 goals. A couple of leans before we wrap it up. We've got one in this game with RJ. Once again, we're looking at corners. Just rattle off your thoughts here.
Yeah, briefly looking at this match, and this was one that I feel like can support Will's thoughts with the under here, but this corner play dramatically stood out for me. So under 9.5 corners is priced at even money, plus 100 here on Bet Rivers. The data, the metrics support averaging 7.4 corners per match. In fact, just 26% of the combined home away matches over the last 25 have seen over 9.5 corners. And just 8% have seen over 10, especially for Leipzig at home. So, this almost looked too good to be true, and I thought that potentially Leipzig could just pile on the shots, which could lead to maybe an excessive amount of corners and defy what the data and the metrics are showing. So that's why it's more of a lean, but it was hard to overlook this play.
Unders for goals and corners when it comes to the Leipzig Zvezda game for RJ. The lean is under 9.5 corners. And to wrap things up, Steve, still in his garden. The light is fading, but you've got something for us for Celtic Atleti. This is Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern.
Bud Light hasn't quite stopped play yet.
Might do for the Europa League show, but continue.
Shout out to the cricket boys on the Cricket World Cup show for that, by the way. I like Atletico Madrid to beat Celtic straight on the money line at even money. The more I was thinking about this probably should be an official play, but something's ingrained into me down the years. Do not bet against Celtic at Celtic Park. It's a tough place to go, but I mean, is it a tough place to go now? Are they that good anymore? That's the thing, isn't it? Really, Atletico Madrid should have way too much quality. Celtic have lost something daft like 8 or 9 games in a row at home in the Champions League. So I think the extra quality will show here.
Okay. Is that your lawnmower, by the way, we can hear?
No. It's not Bayern.
That could be me. I hear a little activity going on in the background.
Okay, so it's your lawnmower.
Yep.
Right, that wraps up the picks and the leans. We need some best bets from the boys. Steve, what's your best bet for Champions League match week 3?
I think it's going to have to be the cards. Over 2.5 AC Milan cards at plus 125. I think they're going to play really dirty in Paris.
RJ, what's your best bet?
I would have to say the Napoli team total over 1.5 would be my favorite bet this week.
Okay, and Will, what's your best play match week 3 Champions League?
I'm promoting my lean to my best play, Ashraf Hakimi, to have at least one shot on target at plus 220. It's got to be done, Dan.
I love it. We'll have to get that on the Google sheet with Joe. That wraps up Betting Weekly Extra Time Champions League edition. Many thanks to Steve, Will, and RJ, who will all be back, of course, for the European head-to-head show on Thursday, and indeed the Europa League show a little later this midweek as well. We've got 2 current champions, a bit like the UEFA Super Cup or maybe the Charity Shield. And take advantage of all the in-play action with Bet Rivers, of course, throughout the European football from all of us. Is that a lawn? What is that, RJ? Is that a lawnmower? It can't be a lawnmower. What is it?
It's a leaf blower.
Oh, right, okay. Well, close.
That time of year out here, but yes, I'm surprised you hear it. I can barely hear it, but
God,
microphones,
Yeah, we can
sensitive.
hear it. Turn it off. Anyway, from all of us, it's goodbye. We'll speak to you later.